took business courses, I think, like her older brothers, and she became an excellent typist and was even a secretary, I guess senior year, for the assistant principal. She learned shorthand and learned to operate the comptometer, which is like, it's like an old adding machine that had like 72 keys.
Commodore 64 is what it is.
I remember them at Arthur Young when I first started, but they didn't make us learn how to use them. They handed us an actual 9-key calculator. So I never actually got to use a comptometer, but Wikipedia says if you were good at it, it was really, you could really pound out some numbers. So, and you could also say that, Isabel was indeed a true lover of reading and the arts, and she enjoyed reading the history books, which her grandfather George Baines had accumulated, over his life, and a box of these history books ended up at the Baines house after George Baines died in 1923. And later on, she also developed, besides history, an interest in the brain. She never talked to me about that, but I guess that was something she was interested in. And Mom's told me this many times, that Sunday afternoons they would walk, the two of them would walk to the Joslin Museum for the piano, for the free piano concerts, and I'm sure they were also checking out the artwork along the way. So they did do that, and that was probably more like a mile and a half. So after school, Isabel held several jobs, but she finally got a job as a waitress at the Union Pacific Resort in Sun Valley, Idaho. And she stayed there several years, and toward the end, also became a telephone operator. So she did more than, started out as a waitress, but eventually became a telephone operator. And at Sun Valley, she learned to ski and basically liked the freedom of kind of being by yourself, and enjoyed being out with nature, and maybe that also relates to all the camping that they ended up doing.
So she's like 19 roughly at this time.
Yeah.
What about this big story that I heard 7,000 times? She was promised some job to go somewhere, but it didn't materialize, and then some guy promised her a job.
Mom has some story like
Yeah, that was mother.
That mother who was to go out to
Sun Valley.
To go out to Sun Valley.
Yeah, maybe that was
Oh,
to go out to
Isabel.
Sun Valley.
Some variation of, and that was burnished in my brain of when a guy promises you a job, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the job. That's what I got out of it. That's what I got out of it.
There's that, yeah. Mom
Okay.
thought she had a job. Well, I think at some point in the war, during World War II, she did return and started working at the Union Pacific headquarters, like at 15th and Dodge.
Sure.
And that's where she and several other women, including Seal, later McDonald, later Sabella, my mama, my best friend, they formed the Bridge Club. And it's not the Union Pacific Bridge Club or the Southside Bridge Club, it's the Bridge Club. And that club lasted 60 years, so I think, roughly until, practically everybody died off.
Yep.
So,
Is our mother the only surviving member, or is there
I think there's one or
residual?
I think there's one or two left. but
She's the highest functioning survivor.
Yeah, that's for sure, absolutely.
And they don't play. Mom's still playing. I guess
Yes,
you
they're
know
local, yes.
that.
Tonight, she's playing at
Probably playing
Skyline.
tonight, so.
That's great.
I guess we can say that Isabel was lucky in love. She was engaged for a short time to a guy named Frank Snyder. This is during the war, who was a pattern operator, and he'd been
Draft dodger.
well, he'd been declared 4F, which is like he was
Physically
unfit
incapable.
for military.
Right,
Some
bad eyes,
like bad eyes. I mean, that's not really. Pat's being sarcastic. That's
Yeah.
not really. That doesn't mean that he was a dirtball or anything.
No.
And that engagement was broken off.
Because
I never got. I'll have to ask
By
Mom.
him.
Oh, was that
By
who did?
Frank, by
Oh,
Frank Snyder.
okay, I think, if I knew that, I forgot
He felt unworthy.
it. He felt unworthy. yeah.
What do y'all happen to know what was the
Mother,
I'm just curious.
Mother
I'm
was
not-
not broken up when
Frank split?
when Frank split, because Frank made a pass at our mother.
Oh.
Well,
I didn't
while
know.
he was engaged to Isabel,
That's not
Oh.
That will always
which
not-
mother never told Isabel
Yeah.
about that.
to this day.
Never did.
Watch that video.
Yeah, I guess we can't show that to the other Turners. However, at the wedding of our mom and our dad in March 1945, when Isabel was the maid of honor, she met the best man, who was our father's younger brother, John Patrick Turner. And after the breakfast reception, actually, I asked Mom about this again. I said, how the hell did they never meet?
Yeah, when they
Prior.
were dating or
Yeah.
something.
To the wedding
And
day.
he said, well, I tried to get something I tried to get something together. Well, I mean,
It was
I mean,
war.
Dad, well, I mean, they were
It was
both in the Army. I mean,
Yeah.
kind of in the Army off and on, more on than off. So I guess that was it.
You want some water, Daddy?
No, I'm fine.
Schedules
So-
conflicted.
Yeah, so anyway, I
The
think
war
there
got
was
in the
one
way.
opportunity, but it didn't happen. But after the breakfast reception at the Blackstone Hotel, the four of them got in a car and drove out to visit Grandma Mac, who by this time was too infirm. She didn't live at 3632 Parker anymore, but Mom thought she lived at a house, staying with somebody not too far from 2311. And so, while our parents were visiting Grandma, Jack and Isabel stayed in the car and got to know each other, and they started dating while Mom and Dad were still on their honeymoon. So, needless to say, love blossomed, and they were married at Our Lady of Lourdes Church in Omaha in September 1947. And
A little over 2 years. A little over 2 years.
Yeah, a little over 2 years, and our mom and dad were the best man and matron of honor. And I think we can all say that Jack and Isabel were a loving and devoted couple their entire married life, and they
Oh, yeah.
raised six children. And I know, as probably everybody can say this, but after Jack passed on, Isabel made it clear to me, on multiple occasions, that she sure wished she could be reunited with Jack. I mean, it was kind of weird in one sense, but obviously never ran out and killed herself. So I mean, she continued her life, but she definitely missed Jack. And we know of a motherly side, a specific instance of a motherly side of Isabel. And this is an incident that Mom knows about, Pat, and I do, but the question is, does Joe remember it? So we'll see. In the summer of 1955, our family went on a camping trip to Yellowstone Park. It was like a 3-week trip, and the three boys went, but at that time, Mike was only about 10 months old. So the decision was made he was just too young to go on this wild trip. So
He couldn't fit in the covered wagon.
couldn't fit the covered wagon. So yeah, that was the.
I still have the tarp from the covered wagon.
Oh, you do? Oh.
So if anybody wants to smell it, they know where to find it.
Well, this was a wagon made on the chassis of like a 37 Plymouth or something.
I need your battery. I'm losing my juice. I need your
Okay.
quickly.
Go ahead.
And okay.